Human biology is officially classified as a weapon, reaches its dramatic apex when Professor Salahir reveals humanity's most formidable trait: persistence beyond rational limits. As he displays humans traversing extreme environments and continuing despite repeated failures, the three-tier students fall silent, finally comprehending how this unrelenting persistence, combined with adaptive strength, social bonding, and unpredictable intelligence, creates an asymmetric threat no specialized civilization can effectively counter. The curved wall of the Kriyanar lecture hall gleamed with an otherworldly luminescence. Professor Salahir adjusted his deep blue skin membrane, the mark of the blue tier, as he arranged his teaching materials through subtle gestures in the air. The three-dimensional display system responded with perfect precision, organizing his presentation on biological weapons into an elegant holographic array. Salahir observed his students filing in. Their skin colors, red, yellow, and blue, segregated them instantly into their biological castes, a system the Kriyanar civilization had maintained for over 3 millennia. The stratification had served them well through the ages of interstellar expansion, creating specialists perfectly adapted to their roles. The reds embodied physical prowess and combat readiness. The yellows excelled in social dynamics and cultural adaptations, while the blues represented the pinnacle of intellectual capacity. The space station's artificial gravity maintained a comfortable environment, though slightly lighter than what the reds preferred for their muscular development. Through the vast observation windows, the blackness of space was interrupted only by distant stars and the occasional shuttle traversing between the station's modules. Today, Salahir began, his voice calm yet penetrating. We will discuss one of the most controversial classifications in the Galactic Security Council's weapons registry. With a flick of his slender fingers, he projected a three-dimensional image of a bipedal organism at the center of the lecture hall. Human biology. A murmur rippled through the students. A red-tier student named Zahir rose to his feet, his crimson skin pulsing with agitation. Professor, with all respect, these creatures barely have the strength to survive 1.5 standard gravity. Their muscles tear under minimal strain. How could such fragile organisms possibly qualify as weapons? Salahir's mouth curved into what humans might recognize as a smile. An excellent question to begin our discussion. Zahir, why indeed would human biology be officially classified as a weapon system? He gestured to the class. This is the challenge I place before you all today. The three-dimensional interactive whiteboard behind him flickered, revealing the outline of the day's lecture. We will examine human biological systems, not as isolated weaknesses, but as an integrated weapons platform that has made the Galactic Security Council place them under the highest level of monitoring. The challenge had been issued. The lecture hall fell silent as the students prepared to have their preconceptions systematically dismantled. Salahir activated the first segment of his presentation. A complex molecular structure appeared, rotating slowly in the air. Its shape was unfamiliar to most students, though the blue tiers recognized elements of its construction. This, Salahir said, is adrenaline, or epinephrine, as humans sometimes call it. A relatively simple hormone by our standards, yet its effects are nothing short of remarkable. He magnified the molecule's structure, highlighting its receptor binding sites. When released into the human bloodstream, this compound triggers what they call the fight-or-flight response. The display shifted to show a human nervous system, with particular focus on the adrenal glands. Under conditions of perceived threat, humans can flood their systems with this compound in milliseconds. The effects are immediate and profound. Zahir leaned forward, his red-tier physiology primed for combat discussion. Despite his skepticism, he couldn't help but show interest. Salahir continued. Muscle strength increases by approximately 30 to 50% instantly. Reaction time decreases by nearly 20%. Pain perception is drastically reduced. Blood flow is redirected to prioritize vital combat functions. With another gesture, he brought up documented cases from human history. There are numerous recorded instances of what humans term hysterical strength. Mothers lifting vehicles weighing several tons to rescue trapped children. Individuals fighting off apex predators with bare hands. Survival in conditions that would normally exceed biological limitations. Zahir's expression remained dubious. Temporary advantages at best. Professor, surely such biological extremes have severe limitations. Indeed, Salahir acknowledged. The duration is typically measured in minutes, not hours. Prolonged activation leads to systemic damage and exhaustion. He paused, assessing the class. However, consider this. Cryonar Red Tier combat specialists require 20 years of genetic conditioning and training to achieve capabilities that humans can access instantaneously through a simple hormonal trigger. Murmurs spread through the Red Tier students. Zahir stood again. But the after effects must be devastating. Such biological shortcuts always carry costs. Correct again, Salahir said, bringing up medical data. The human body experiences significant strain, elevated blood pressure, muscle microtears, metabolic imbalances. Yet their recovery cycle is remarkably efficient. Most humans can experience multiple adrenaline activations within a single day and still maintain functionality. He highlighted a series of receptor pathways. Furthermore, their bodies demonstrate adaptation to regular adrenaline exposure. Humans in high-stress environments develop enhanced recovery mechanisms and can sustain elevated performance states for progressively longer periods. Zahir frowned, searching for weaknesses in the argument. But specialized function must suffer. Our tier system ensures perfection in designated roles. Humans cannot possibly maintain both this emergency system and specialized excellence. Salahir's expression shifted subtly. That brings us perfectly to our next topic. Please observe. The display transformed, showing an intricate network of connections. At first, it resembled a neural mapping, but as it expanded, the students realized they were looking at something entirely different. This, Salahir explained, represents what humans call their social network, not their primitive digital communications, but their biological capacity for social connection. The display zoomed out further, revealing interconnections that extended far beyond human-to-human links. Humans possess an extraordinary capability that few species in the galaxy have developed: cross-species bonding. They form genuine emotional attachments to organisms completely unrelated to them, evolutionarily. The display showed humans interacting with various Earth animals: wolves, horses, elephants, even predatory species like lions and bears. What you're observing is not mere domestication for utility. Humans form what they call emotional bonds with other species. These connections are biochemically real, mediated through oxytocin, vasopressin, and other neuropeptides. A yellow-tier student named Mihara raised her hand, her golden skin reflecting the holographic light. Professor, surely this is just a primitive form of the yellow tier's diplomatic specialization? Our empathic capabilities are genetically optimized for cross-cultural negotiation. Salahir nodded respectfully. A logical comparison. Mihara. However, there's a critical difference. Yellow-tier empathic specialization requires compatible neurological structures, essentially, minds that function along similar parameters. Humans bond with minds utterly alien to their own. The display shifted to show humans caring for species with radically different brain structures: octopi, ravens, even simple organisms like dogs and cats. They intuitively understand the emotional states of beings whose neural architecture bears little resemblance to their own. And, more remarkably, they can communicate their intentions and establish trust across these biological divides. Mihara frowned. But how does this qualify as a weapon? Social bonding seems harmless, even beneficial. Consider the military applications, Salahir replied. Throughout their history, humans have partnered with other species to extend their biological capabilities. Wolves became war dogs. Horses became battle mounts. Even insects like bees have been weaponized by human social direction. The display showed historical images of military working animals throughout human history. But the true weapon aspect lies in their ability to form coalitions with species that would normally compete or conflict. Humans have repeatedly turned potential predators or competitors into allies, a biological form of recruitment that no other species, including our own, has mastered at such scale. Mihara shook her head. But surely this is limited to simple creatures. They couldn't possibly navigate the complex cultural nuances of advanced civilizations like ours. That assumption, Salahir said carefully, is precisely what concerns the Galactic Security Council. Humans don't merely adapt to different cultures. They absorb them, integrate elements they find useful, and establish connections that transcend deep cultural divides. The display shifted to show human diplomatic history. Conflicts resolved through unexpected alliances, ancient enemies becoming trading partners. Their biological empathy mechanisms don't require cultural similarity. In fact, they appear particularly adept at connecting with what they perceive as different or other. This capacity has no parallel among Cryonar tiers, where our social connections are strongly influenced by tier similarity. Mihara fell silent, contemplating the implications. The yellow tier students exchanged troubled glances, recognizing a capability that challenged their specialized role in Cryonar society. Now, Salahir continued, transitioning to the next segment, let us examine what might be most relevant to the blue tier, human cognitive architecture. The holographic display transformed again, this time showing human brain structure alongside various problem-solving paradigms. The blue tier students leaned forward collectively, their specialized intelligence instantly engaged. Human intelligence differs fundamentally from our specialized cognitive models, Salahir explained. While blue tier Cryonar possess optimized analytical capabilities in designated domains, human cognition operates on a different principle entirely. He displayed brain scans of various humans alongside their achievements. Einstein, Ramanujan, Turing, Marie Curie. These individuals represent what humans call genius, cognitive outliers who made transformative contributions to knowledge. A blue-tier student named Uhari raised his hand. These appear to be statistical anomalies. Professor, surely the average human cognitive capability is far lower. A reasonable observation, Salahir acknowledged. However, the weapon aspect lies not in the average, but in the distribution pattern. He displayed a statistical curve. Human cognitive specialization occurs naturally and unpredictably. They regularly produce individuals with extreme cognitive capabilities in specific domains, what they sometimes call savants, or, in milder forms, those with autism spectrum variations. The display showed humans with extraordinary mathematical, musical, and pattern recognition abilities. Unlike our carefully engineered blue-tier specializations, which follow predictable parameters, human cognitive specialization emerges spontaneously and follows no easily discernible pattern. This unpredictability makes their intellectual contributions impossible to anticipate or counter effectively. Uhari frowned. But specialized intelligence without systematic application has limited utility. Our blue-tier capabilities are integrated into cohesive knowledge frameworks. Salahir nodded. And here lies the remarkable feature. Humans naturally form collaborative intellectual networks. The display showed scientific communities, research partnerships, and academic institutions. These cognitive outliers don't operate in isolation. Their specialized insights are rapidly integrated into collective knowledge systems. He highlighted historical scientific breakthroughs. Consider the development of quantum mechanics, relativity theory, or computational science. Each began with cognitive leaps by individuals that were then synthesized into comprehensive frameworks through collaboration. Uhari's expression remained skeptical. But surely there are upper limits to their cognitive potential. Our blue-tier enhancements represent the pinnacle of possible neural efficiency. That assumption was widely held, Salahir said, until human cognitive architectures were thoroughly analyzed. He displayed comparative neural structures. Their brains utilize what appears to be a highly inefficient organization: distributed processing, massive redundancy, seemingly wasteful connectivity patterns. Yet this very inefficiency creates cognitive flexibility that our optimized systems cannot match. The display showed problem-solving approaches across species. When confronted with novel challenges requiring cognitive adaptation, humans consistently outperform specialized intelligence systems, including our own blue-tier specialists. They make intuitive leaps across knowledge domains that our optimized neural pathways cannot traverse. Uhari fell silent, but his blue skin darkened slightly, a sign of deep thought among his tier. We have now examined three distinct aspects of human biology. Salahir summarized: their emergency performance system, their social bonding capacity, and their cognitive architecture. Each represents a capability that parallels our specialized tiers, yet functions according to different principles. He paused, surveying the lecture hall. The students from all three tiers showed signs of engagement, their initial skepticism giving way to reluctant interest. But we have not yet addressed the most significant biological weapon in the human arsenal: the capability that most concerns the Galactic Security Council. The holographic display cleared, then showed a simple image: a human figure running across varied terrain. Persistence, Salahir said quietly. Biological persistence beyond rational limits. The display expanded to show humans traversing extreme environments: scorching deserts, frozen tundras, dense jungles, high mountains. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. Unlike ambush predators that rely on brief bursts of speed, humans pursued prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. This evolutionary history shaped every aspect of their biology. He highlighted human physiological systems. Their thermoregulation is unparalleled among bipedal species. Their sweat glands, over 2 million distributed across their skin surface, allow them to maintain activity in temperature ranges that would incapacitate most sentient species. The display showed humans running across vast distances. They can maintain continuous physical motion for extreme durations. The average human can be trained to run over 100 kilometers without stopping. Elite specimens have completed journeys of thousands of kilometers on foot. Zahir, the red-tier student, leaned forward. But at what speed? Endurance without power has limited combat application. A valid point, Salahir conceded. Their velocity is indeed modest by red-tier standards. However, consider the strategic implication. Humans don't need to be faster than their adversaries. They simply need to continue moving after others have stopped. The display showed what appeared to be primitive human hunting techniques. They called this persistence hunting. They would pursue prey not by outrunning it, but by preventing it from resting. The target would sprint away, rest, then find humans still approaching. Eventually, superior organisms would collapse from combined heat exhaustion and psychological stress. Zahir's expression shifted as the military implications became clear. This persistence extends beyond physical movement. Salahir continued. Humans demonstrate psychological persistence that defies rational limitations. They continue striving toward objectives despite repeated failures, injuries, and clear evidence of futility. The display showed humans attempting seemingly impossible tasks, failing repeatedly, yet continuing. What appears to be irrational stubbornness is actually a deep biological adaptation. Their neurochemical reward systems are triggered not only by success, but by the persistence itself. They experience what they call satisfaction or pride in simply continuing to strive. Mihara, the yellow tier student, raised her hand again. This sounds like a psychological vulnerability, not a strength. Surely such irrational persistence would lead to resource waste and strategic failure. In individual cases, yes, Salahir acknowledged. But at a species level, this persistence drives innovation precisely because it ignores apparent impossibilities. Humans attempted powered flight for centuries before succeeding. They persisted in space exploration despite catastrophic failures. Their medical advancements often came after thousands of unsuccessful attempts. The display showed the progression of human technologies, each marked by countless failures before breakthrough success. But the true weapon aspect emerges when we consider their environmental adaptability. Salahir continued. Humans have established settlements in environments ranging from -50 to +50 degrees Celsius. They function in atmospheric pressures from high mountains to deep seas. They adapt to gravity variations that would cripple most species. The display showed human habitations in extreme environments across Earth and, more recently, on other worlds. Unlike our specialized tiers, which require specific environmental parameters to maintain optimal function, humans demonstrate generalized adaptation to almost any condition. They operate at perhaps 70% efficiency across a vast range of environments, rather than achieving 100% in a narrow optimal zone. Salahir paused, allowing the implications to sink in. The lecture hall had grown completely silent. Students from all three tiers were now fully engaged, their initial skepticism replaced by thoughtful consideration. The Galactic Security Council's classification of human biology as a weapon system stems not from any single capability I've described, but from the integration of these elements. Consider a species that can instantly boost performance in crisis, form alliances across biological boundaries, generate unpredictable cognitive innovations, and persist beyond rational limitations. He gestured, bringing the display back to the original human figure. Individually, none of these traits appears particularly threatening, but combined in a single organism, they create what military strategists call an asymmetric threat, one that cannot be effectively countered through conventional means. Zahir stood again, but his posture had changed. The aggressive confidence had given way to thoughtful consideration. Professor, you've presented compelling individual capabilities, but our tier specialization surely still offers advantages in direct competition. Red tier strength and combat reflexes exceed human capabilities, even with their adrenaline enhancement. In isolated parameters, yes, Salahir agreed. But warfare isn't conducted through isolated parameters. The human weapon system doesn't attempt to outperform specialists in their domain. It outmaneuvers the very concept of specialization. Mihara joined the discussion. Their social bonding capability still requires compatible species. Our yellow-tier diplomatic corps operates across far greater biological diversity, with species that follow similar social paradigms, Salahir countered gently. Humans form functional relationships with organisms that don't even share their basic sensory apparatus or communication methods. Uhari, the blue-tier student who had been silent for some time, finally spoke. Their cognitive innovations, while unpredictable, still follow underlying physical laws. Blue-tier analytical systems can eventually decipher any pattern they discover. Eventually, Salahir emphasized. But military advantage often depends on temporary asymmetries. By the time one human innovation is fully analyzed, they have typically generated several more. The three students exchanged glances, a rare moment of cross-tier communication in Kryonar society. Professor, Zahir said slowly, you've described human biology as if it's a unified system, but you've also emphasized their individuality and variation. These seem contradictory. Salahir's expression brightened. An excellent observation. Zahir, this apparent contradiction is, in fact, the most sophisticated aspect of the human weapon system. Their biological variation isn't random. It's distributed across functional parameters that ensure population-level capability, while maintaining individual specialization. The display showed human population distributions across various traits. They simultaneously maintain specialized excellence and generalized competence. Not every human can perform every function at peak levels, but virtually any human can perform any function at minimally effective levels. And, within any human population, specialists in every critical domain will naturally emerge. The students continued their cross-tier exchange, each now seeing aspects of the issue that their specialized perspectives had initially missed. It appears, Uhari said thoughtfully, that our tier specialization, while creating excellence in designated domains, might actually represent a strategic vulnerability when confronting a species with human-type integrated capabilities. That, Salahir said quietly, is precisely the conclusion that led the Galactic Security Council to classify human biology as a weapon system. The lecture hall fell silent again as the implications settled across the assembled students. What had begun as an academic exercise had transformed into something more profound, a recognition that their cherished tier system, the foundation of Kryanar civilization, might represent not an evolutionary pinnacle, but a strategic limitation. Zahir broke the silence. Professor, given these observations, what policy has the Council adopted toward humans? Until recently, Salahir replied, containment and monitoring. Humans were permitted controlled development but restricted from gaining certain technologies or expanding beyond defined boundaries. And now, Mihara asked. Salahir's expression shifted to what humans might interpret as hopeful. That is changing, largely due to research like what we've discussed today. There is growing recognition that human biology, while qualifying as a weapon system under technical parameters, might better be understood as an adaptive system with significant collaborative potential. The display shifted to show recent diplomatic exchanges between Kryanar representatives and human delegations. The Kryanar High Council has initiated a reassessment of human classification. Rather than viewing their biological capabilities as threats to be contained, there is movement toward recognizing them as complementary to our own specialized systems. The three student representatives exchanged glances again, a silent communication passing between them. Professor, Uhari said, are you suggesting that our civilization might benefit from closer integration with humans, despite their classification as a biological weapon system? I am suggesting, Salahir replied carefully, that the very traits that qualify human biology as a weapon system also make them uniquely valuable as potential allies. Their adaptability, persistence, and integrative capabilities could complement our specialized excellence in ways that benefit both civilizations. Zahir nodded slowly, his red-tier perspective shifting. A force multiplier rather than a threat. Precisely, Salahir confirmed. And this recognition is gaining traction throughout Kryanar leadership circles. As the lecture concluded, the students remained in their seats, continuing discussions across tier boundaries, an unusual sight in Kryanar educational settings. Salahir observed with satisfaction as red, yellow, and blue students engaged in animated conversation, each contributing perspectives that the others could not generate independently. It was, he reflected, a small-scale demonstration of exactly the integrative advantage he had been describing throughout the lecture. Perhaps the rigid specialization that had defined Kryanar civilization for millennia was finally ready for evolution. 3 cycles later, Salahir stood in the Grand Assembly Chamber of the Kryanar High Council. The tiered seating reflected the traditional stratification of their society, red, yellow, and blue sections clearly delineated. But today, something unprecedented was occurring. Representatives from each tier had relocated to sit in mixed groupings, a physical representation of the philosophical shift underway. At the center of the chamber stood a delegation of humans, their unmodified biology now viewed not with suspicion, but with growing appreciation. The lead representative, a woman whose name translated roughly as Ambassador Chen, addressed the assembly with calm confidence. The human delegation acknowledges the Cryonar Council's reclassification of human biology from controlled weapon system to adaptive collaborative resource, she said. We welcome this evolution in perspective and look forward to establishing meaningful exchange between our civilizations. From his position among the blue-tier representatives, Salahir noticed his former students, Zahir, Mihara, and Uhari, seated together in one of the integrated sections. They had been appointed to the newly formed Integration Committee, tasked with developing frameworks for human cryonar cooperation. The High Council presider, a blue-tier elder named Koravan, rose to address the assembly. Today marks the beginning of a new approach in cryonar civilization. For millennia, we have pursued excellence through specialization. Our tier system has served us well, creating unparalleled capabilities in distinct domains. He gestured toward the human delegation. But we now recognize that another path to excellence exists, one based not on isolated specialization, but on integrated adaptation. The human model offers insights that may complement our own approaches and lead to mutual advancement. The assembly chamber filled with the soft, harmonic tones that signified cryonar approval. Even from the traditionally conservative red-tier sections, the acknowledgement was clear. Therefore, Koravan continued, the High Council hereby establishes the first collaborative exchange initiative between cryonar and human civilizations, beginning with shared research projects and diplomatic exchanges. We will explore the possibilities of deeper integration while respecting the unique, evolutionary paths of both species. Ambassador Chen stepped forward again. On behalf of Earth's united governance, I affirm our commitment to this initiative. Our biology may have evolved as a weapon for survival in a challenging environment, but we have learned to direct these capabilities toward creation rather than destruction. We believe that the combination of cryonar specialized excellence and human adaptive integration offers unprecedented potential for both our peoples. The formal proceedings concluded, and the assembly transitioned to a more casual diplomatic reception. Salahir made his way through the crowd toward his former students. Professor, Zahir greeted him, the red tier's typical formality softened by genuine respect. Your lecture changed the trajectory of my thinking. I now see how physical capabilities serve larger systemic functions, rather than merely combat applications. Mihara nodded agreement. The yellow tier has already begun developing new diplomatic frameworks that incorporate human-style adaptive bonding, rather than relying solely on formalized protocols. The preliminary results are promising. And the Blue Tier Research Division, Uhari added, has initiated collaborative projects with human cognitive specialists. Their intuitive leaps complement our analytical precision in unexpected ways. Salahir felt a profound satisfaction that transcended the usual blue-tier intellectual gratification. You have all demonstrated the very principle we discussed, the ability to integrate perspectives across traditional boundaries. The Integration Committee has proposed a radical concept, Zahir said, lowering his voice slightly. We are considering a pilot program for cryonar individuals to train in multiple tier specialties, rather than pursuing depth in only one domain. A significant departure from tradition, Salahir observed. But one consistent with the evidence, Mihara countered. If human biology demonstrates the value of integrated capabilities, perhaps our own biology has greater flexibility than our cultural practices have allowed us to explore. Uhari's blue skin rippled with intellectual excitement. The most interesting question is whether our specialized physiologies can be maintained while developing secondary capabilities, or whether we would need to accept partial reduction in primary functions to achieve integration. A perfect research question for cross-species collaboration, Salahir noted. Humans have extensive experience with the generalist-specialist balance. Across the chamber, Ambassador Chen was engaged in animated conversation with a mixed group of Cryonar representatives. Despite the obvious biological differences, the interaction flowed with remarkable ease. Exactly the adaptive social capability that Salahir had described in his lecture. Professor, Zahir said thoughtfully, in your lecture, you presented human biology as a classified weapon system. Given the developments since then, how would you categorize it now? Salahir considered the question carefully. Perhaps the most accurate classification would be evolutionary alternative. Not better or worse than our specialized model, but a different solution to the challenge of survival and advancement. And potentially complementary to our own approach, Mihara added, which suggests, Uhari concluded, that the true opportunity lies not in either civilization, adopting the other's biological strategy, but in creating systems where both approaches function in concert. Salahir nodded, watching as humans and Cryonar from all three tiers continued their interactions across the chamber. The rigid boundaries that had defined Cryonar society for millennia were not dissolving. That would require biological evolution beyond current possibilities, but they were becoming permeable, allowing flow between previously isolated domains. On the observation deck of the space station, two figures stood side by side, gazing at the spectacular stellar formation visible through the vast, transparent barrier. Ambassador Chen and Professor Salahir had found a moment of quiet amidst the diplomatic activities. Your lecture on human biology as a weapon system has become quite famous, Chen remarked. It's been translated and distributed widely on Earth. I hope it hasn't caused offense, Salahir said. The classification was technically accurate according to galactic security parameters, but perhaps lacks nuance. Chen smiled. On the contrary, humans rather enjoy being recognized for capabilities we've often taken for granted. Being classified as a biological weapon system has a certain appeal to our persistent natures. An interesting response, Salahir observed. Most species would object to such categorization. Humans tend to find motivation in challenge, Chen replied. Being told we're dangerous makes us determined to prove we can be dangerous in constructive ways. Salahir's skin rippled in the blue-tear expression of amusement. A response that perfectly illustrates the adaptive psychology I described in my lecture. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as a Cryonar transport vessel executed a perfect docking maneuver at one of the station's ports. Professor, Chen said eventually, do you believe our civilizations can truly integrate, given our fundamentally different evolutionary approaches? Specialized excellence versus adaptive persistence is a profound philosophical divide. Salahir considered the question with blue-tear thoroughness. I believe we can achieve something more valuable than integration in the conventional sense, rather than merging our approaches and potentially diluting their respective strengths. We might develop complementary systems where each civilization contributes its evolutionary advantages. Specialized excellence providing depth, adaptive persistence providing breadth, Chen suggested. Precisely. Neither approach is inherently superior, but together they might address challenges that neither could resolve independently. Chen nodded thoughtfully. On Earth, we have a concept called emergence, the phenomenon where combined systems develop properties that could not be predicted from their separate components. A concept familiar to blue-tier theoretical work as well, Salahir noted. Perhaps that is what we are witnessing now, the early stages of an emergent system combining Cryonar specialization and human adaptation. A weapon transformed into a tool, Chen said with a smile. Or perhaps, Salahir replied, a recognition that the boundary between weapon and tool has always been largely a matter of perspective, as they turned from the observation deck to rejoin the diplomatic proceedings. Salahir reflected that this conversation itself demonstrated the principle he had presented in his lecture. The human's adaptive thinking complemented his specialized knowledge, creating insights that neither would likely have generated alone. The official reclassification of human biology from weapon to ally was merely the beginning. The true transformation lay in recognizing that diversity of evolutionary approach represented not a threat to be contained, but an opportunity to be embraced. In that recognition, both civilizations had taken their first steps toward a future neither could have envisioned independently, a future where specialized excellence and adaptive persistence combined to create possibilities beyond the imagination of either approach alone. In the Grand Assembly Chamber, representatives of both species continued their discussions, laying the groundwork for collaboration that would eventually extend across stellar systems. The initial wariness had given way to genuine curiosity, and nascent trust was taking root between civilizations that had evolved along radically different paths. The weapon had not been dismantled or contained. Instead, it had been recognized for what it truly was, not merely a threat, but a different kind of strength. And in that recognition, both humans and Cryonar had discovered the most powerful weapon of all, the ability to transform potential conflict into unprecedented collaboration.